Da 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 da
Hello.
da 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 da. The song doesn't quite finish out the phrase, so I try to finish the phrase for that. Yeah.
How you doing, Randall? You all right?
I'm doing good. Actually, I skipped karaoke last night just to make sure I would have plenty of sleep for today's show. So I'm actually 7+ hours on my Fitbit for sleep last night, and that's pretty amazing for a Tuesday night to Wednesday morning transition that I normally have. So I'm feeling chipper.
Thank you very much. We're going to dive straight to the show. What we're going to do this week, we're going to jump in some coding, so we kind of get the questions going. We're going to have a hard stop an hour and a half. A lot of us have a few other things we need to be doing now, so hopefully we'll do some longer shows in the coming weeks. We'll get into the do's and don'ts and get going and quick as we can and go from there.
Sure.
All right.
I'm Virtual Scott today, so I guess I get to read this, which is, so be nice, respectful, constructive. This is a YouTube live event. It's also a Google sort of umbrella event, so we're under Google's sort of general rules as well. Don't post anything if it's adult or rude or offensive. Don't advertise or promote anything. If your face is not on screen, you don't get to talk about your stuff. Okay, that's the way that works. So you can talk about questions about stuff, but you can't promote stuff. Don't do that. Don't spam. Don't post the same thing again and again. In particular, don't post a question and then post the same question 20 minutes later. You end up losing 20 minutes worth of time in the queue because we only take the most recent instance of your question, which means you'll be at the bottom of the queue. So please don't do that. Harassment of any kind, not tolerated. We do have ban hammers. We do use them. But do have a good time, because we have a good time doing this show. And that's why we keep coming back week after week after week to be able to share our knowledge with you and to let you all congregate and meet each other up and stuff like that. So it's really kind of a cool opportunity for us as well. So have fun.
Definitely have a good time.
Yeah.
I will also mention that you cannot put links in the chat. If you put links in, we do not see your message at all. The entire message is scrubbed. So if you want to share some code, you can do that. You need to post it on a gist on GitHub and put the hash from the gist, from the URL of the gist, pop that in the chat, and we can load it up from there. And then we evaluate if we wanted to bring it onto the stream. Cool. Okay, and then just a little note. Make sure you put your question in the chat with a Q in front. You missed that one out, Randall. Come on.
I'm the question magician, and I forgot that. Well, I usually mention that when I get to the question magician introduction.
Let's do some introductions. So my name's Sunlight for Flutter Community Leader, CTO of Dev Angels London, and a bunch of other stuff around the community, talks and FlutterCon. FlutterCon USA coming up this year, September. Yep. Come join us. Randall, you're going to be there, right?
I don't know yet.
Fingers crossed.
I have to wait until the GDE guys approve my travel.
Well, Scott can't be with us today. He's not feeling very well, but Randall's here as usual.
And I just mentioned GDE. I'm a Google developer expert. I'm one of the first group of Dart and Flutter Google developer experts from 5.5, I think almost 6 years ago now. And what that means is I spend a lot of time answering questions on the socials. So Discord, Slack, Stack Overflow, and Reddit. I also provide presentations. I just did a presentation a couple of weeks ago. I also have a YouTube channel. In fact, I just published my first thing in a few months, sadly. That's actually, it was pretty fun. I'll put the link to my YouTube channel in the notes a little bit later. And I'm also, for this show, the question magician, which means I am the one responsible for watching the chat. And if I see a message that has Q: in front of it, then I know that it is a question for us, the panel. If you don't put Q: in front of it, I think it's just you chatting amongst each other or answering each other or whatever. And you do that a lot. So the only way we know whether it's for us or you're just chatting is the Q: in front. So be sure you include that.
Be sure to include it. Talking about which, the panel. Danielle, welcome to the stage. Hello, Danielle.
Hey there. Hi. Yeah, see, I thought maybe if Randall was going to be Virtual Scott, then I would get to make his dad joke, but that's okay. You know. Anyway, hi, everybody. I'm Danielle Cox, as it says there. I am the lead for the Flutter team at a startup called Ardly. And even more proud probably I'm one of the organizers of a group called the Flutteristas. So if you happen to be female or non-binary, and obviously like Flutter because you're here, you should hit me up and we will get you to fill out the form and I will get you fast-tracked on and you can join us. We've got some exciting meetings coming up. So anyway, that's me.
And we also have a member of the community here, Raf. Welcome to the stage, Raf.
Hey. Hello, everyone. I used to be a regular here, but I'm coming back now since my absence. And
your head is here for.
Yes,
because I become smaller because I don't help too much. And yeah, I help with community stuff, basically, and projects. So yeah, good to be back.
I've got a couple of things to share here, so we can start some conversations around this while we wait for the questions to come in, and we'll start some live coding in a minute. Let me see if I can share this. So for those that don't know, LG have officially decided to support Flutter.
Yes.
And they've got better performance and a more playful experience than their current web-based stuff. So interesting enough, the highlights from what I understand is that they'll still be running it on the WebOS stuff, but I think they'll be going down the route. From my understanding, is they're probably going down the route of doing more sort of lower level things, but they've actually getting a better performance out of all their stuff than they're not using Flutter. So that's great. That's a great experience. I'll pop this link for anyone who wants to read the official news from their site. There are a couple of people that have actually posted like breakdowns and information around this over some time. It was announced in the previous Flutter version. I think that LG were doing something, but this is the official announcement. So if anyone wants to go read it, they can.
Yeah, that's actually what I saw. That was there was two things that were probably noteworthy. One of them is it's running an older version of Flutter right now.
Yeah.
So you're a little ways behind on that. So that might be a little hard for some people. And the second is they're having this hackathon with crazy prizes is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I think that from what I remember is there's a link on the page for anyone who wants to go see it. It was 100K, was it? Is that the top prize or something? Which is like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
I'm like,
that's what actually that's something I heard someone say. I have not independently verified that either. I've not clicked on the link either yet. But
do you think I could enter the Counter app and get $100,000?
I don't think so. But,
here, count on your TV now.
But yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see what people come up with. I don't know any of the rules around the hackathon. Go visit the link. We're not running it, so I'll let you go explore that yourselves. I also wanted to show you this. This is, have you guys seen this post? It was just recently from our good friend Ralph.
Oh, wow.
How cool is that? That's just the power of shaders right there.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Right. I just thought I'd share that. And then another one was Matan, who works for Google as a Google engineer. He was asking if anyone's been interested in performance tuned specialized collections for Dart for specific algorithms, right? I'm like, of course. And he's should we release his own package or should we stay inside? But this is like flat queue here. So a very fast and tiny binary heap priority queue that stores int and double. So these are the kind of things that as it says here, 50% faster on add, 200% faster on remove. These things can actually make a difference if you're doing algorithms or dealing with algorithms for specific reasons. And then also index map here, which also makes improvements. But I think what do you say here? It actually looks like it's 8 times faster priority queue. So I mean, these are the kind of things that we really need to start doing as a community, feeding back into the main project, right? Get them out in the package, then highlight them to the team, raise a PR, see if it's worth them including it into the main Dart, collection of operations. I mean, this came up in conversation the other day, which was people saying to me they really love Golang because Go has a huge standard library. It's made up of community efforts as well, but it's like they index it as a big library of packages that you can use. And I'm wondering if we should be doing as a community, or maybe speaking to the Flutter team, Dart Flutter teams themselves, about maybe organizing something similar where it's like, oh, you need HTTP server, then okay, here's the okay, it's built in, but you know what I mean, like all the different various standards and options, so you know what way you should be going for what package. And there's an interesting idea that we should be feeding that back in, maybe making like a more of a not third party, not first party, but maybe something in between, which can be community led. I think that's kind of a good idea.
Yeah.
That was good.
And then there's also this came up. If you're on an 8-hour flight, did you see this? If you're on an 8-hour flight, which seat would you take?
Okay.
I got. Where's your answers? Go on.
Wow.
Which number would you be sitting in if you're on an 8-hour flight? And you'll notice the absence of myself. Apparently, I'm the pilot.
Nice.
Well, I'm probably taking 10 because Pooja is really small.
I'm taking 1.
Good plan.
Yeah,
good plan.
I'm taking 1 so I could harass Craig the entire way.
Yeah, but you're gonna have Luke behind you. You're gonna have Luke behind you, like
he's not going to be kicking my seat. If he does, I'll turn around and yell at him.
Yeah. I mean, 7 between Alicia and Majid would be fine, except for Majid's pretty big. So, like I said, I think I'm sticking with my wanting to sit next to a small person in the middle seat.
I feel like having a seat with lots of people around you just makes things like good. So like 3 is quite an interesting one, because then you get to kind of talk to like 6 people, right, easily without having to move around, right?
Yeah.
I don't know who's the G, who's got the Google in the background. I don't know. I can't see that from here. Oh, is that Ezra? That's Ezra.
Maybe Ezra, right? Yeah. Is it Ezra?
Yeah, it's Ezra. It's Ezra. So, yeah. I mean, 8 could also be a nice position because you've still got another 6 people around you that you can talk to.
Oh yeah.
No,
since I'm sitting with 10, 8's a great seat too because you still got access to me. So.
Yeah. Exactly. So there you go. Put your numbers in the chat if you want to join that.
This is
I'll pop
awesome.
the link, by the way. For those that haven't seen this, I'm going to pop the links in the chat to all these things. And
yeah, for sure the shader one. I'd like to see that because that was cool.
I'll pop all the links. Are going to be in the live chat now.
Nice.
Ralph normally posts the code for his things, so you should be able to probably ask him if he can post it or see it. So that was my little newsy update stuff going on right now. Oh, look. It's a man from America. Yay. Hey, man. Welcome to the stream. Let's
we have 12 questions already.
Let's just jump straight into the questions, and then I'll get prepared for some live coding, and we'll try and kind of navigate this.
Cool. Let's see. So first one. I recently upgraded Flutter SDK. Now the APK build size is 3 times more than previous version. Is that probably because it's including all the variations that only one of them is actually going to get downloaded from the store?
Yeah. But they're called fat APKs, and they're not a problem. The fact that your APK is larger makes 0 difference to what someone downloads on their device, right? When you build your APK, it contains lots of debug information, lots of extra stuff that gets uploaded to the App Store, and the App Store extracts your APK, repackages up the APK. It's actually a different type of bundle now. And then that gets sent down to the device. For example, if you include assets of different resolutions, it will only download the resolution necessary for that density of device that it's going down to. Things like that. So yeah, it's not a problem. It may be a problem, the fact that, okay, now your things are bigger and you have to have more bandwidth to upload them to the Play Store, sure. Or it may take longer to build them. But this is just the necessity of having more debug information and more stuff. I highly doubt it was 3 times larger just from Flutter. So I suspect you probably added something like Firebase as a dependency. That would make more sense at 3 times larger. But,
cool.
But I mean, okay, but this does raise up a concern. How can we go from that and figure out, how bloated is the actual APK that someone's downloading?
So there is actually a tooling inside the IDE where you can actually examine the size of APKs, and it does have does show you what the expected downloads will be for the different types of devices. Also, when you upload to the App Store, it does show you in the APK Explorer as well, that information. So if you're interested, it actually shows you in the App Store, in the Play Store, the expected size of an update as well. So that's kind of helpful.
Okay, next one. How can I implement automatic monthly uploads of user contacts to our server in a Flutter app used by 200 real estate employees?
I hope you don't mean their contacts from their device, because that is super effed.
Yeah, you don't want to be doing that.
You are going to get hit hard by every sort of problem if you do that.
Yeah.
Not just legal. I can tell you now.
Yeah.
I mean, you can put in your terms of service and you can officially do it, but no one's going to want to use your app. So I'm pretty sure you're going to be shunned and then put on some blacklists, right? So just let you know, don't do that. However, if you're talking about your own contact list inside the app, well, that should already be on your server, hopefully, in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, that just feels so super strange. Like 200 real estate employees of your company, they're using a Flutter app, and you want to upload their contacts.
Yeah, no, that just smells.
Yeah,
that's not gonna fly. It's not. They're not gonna let it in the store.
They wouldn't even let it in. And if they found it in the store, they'd probably just blacklist your account.
Yeah. You're skirting danger there. That's for sure.
Yeah, I can't think of any reason why anyone would need to do that. Yeah, so you can do things like examine the user contacts on device, right? So if you need to like find if they've already got a person with the same name and add metadata to that, like adding your, like WhatsApp does, it adds the WhatsApp references to the address book so that you go to the address book and tap on WhatsApp and go to their account, stuff like that. That's all on device. It never leaves the device. So there's an expectation of privacy. Yeah, but uploading to the server, no.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, I mean,
next one is Gist, so you might want to grab the
let's
link
grab that.
there.
We'll skip on to the next one until we have time to bring it up.
Okay, so the next one is, what's the best way to maintain the project as we've created one and new developers code on their way? How to maintain the same code base for a long time as projects take time? Standard software engineering headaches. Yes.
No,
this is normal.
The answer is to have some standards. I mean, you need to have, you need to define the standards. I mean, for the Dart code, I like effective Dart. I don't see any reason to go around that. But
okay,
that's where code reviews come into play. That's where to make sure that people do maintain them.
Yeah. I was just going to say, literally, this is the reason for having a tech lead on a project, right? Mm-hmm. Someone who has the technical vision, and there's a standard that's being enforced, right? If you can't just start like if you're getting new developers on your project and they're going, I only use Block, and you're using Riverpod, they don't get to use Block. It's that simple. Right. They have to use Riverpod because the project uses Riverpod, right? It's a bit harsh, that, but you get my point. That's the kind of vision that you have to have, that people can't just keep chucking stuff in, because you're going to get a complete mess of a code base, which has lots of different ways of doing the same thing, and it's going to be completely unmaintainable.
You also need to be very aware of what technical debt is, and be making sure that you're not introducing technical debt into your application. For example, everything should be documented as to its purpose, not just what it does, but what its purpose is. And you need tests to cover enough of your code to make sure that you have no regressions when new code gets added. Also,
if something does go wrong, write a test for it.
Yeah.
Write a test to make sure it doesn't happen again, right? The other one, I would say documentation is one of those things. It's like people documenting, like, model objects aside, if you're just documenting saying, like, I don't know, let's say the function is like, get latest user, right? I don't know, or get, last post, right? You could document that as like, this gets the last post.
Oh, I've seen that. I've seen that.
But why? Like
Yes.
it adds zero contextual information. You should be saying why it's been used, when it's been used. It can only be used once the user's logged in. It will throw an error if it's not logged. The user's not logged in. Stuff like this. The metadata, the information you need to understand how that goes. So you don't have to go into the code of that function, go down and travel it to try and understand the context around what that function does and how it behaves. Right? That's what you need to be including in that. In the comments,
but writing effective Dart doc is hard.
Yeah, but again, the thing that's not reverse engineerable very quickly. I mean, I can look at code and I can tell what it is doing pretty readily,
but, Randall,
it's the why.
At your level, though, right? That's the thing, right? Yeah. Like, if you want your code to be accessible to juniors and above, the idea is that you need to have that kind of effective documentation.
Right.
And once again, effective Dart talks about that.
Yeah.
There's also this aspect of, we talk about documentation in two fashions, right? There's documentation, there's inline documentation in terms of your code to explain how your code works, but then there's documentation on the repository as a whole, how the project works, how you construct things, what are the patterns that are being used, how it works. Like, it's key. We talk about technical debt. This is technical debt, right? For a project to be maintained for a long period of time, it needs this type of documentation alongside it being maintained as it goes. It needs tests.
Yes.
So you talk about maintaining a project, and it's great to bring on new developers and do feature improvements. But if all you're doing is adding new features, you're going to screw yourself. You're going to completely screw yourself.
The other thing to keep in mind is if you're using Dart doc properly, then if you're looking at one piece of code and it uses a class, you can hover that class and you get the doc for that class right there in line. You don't have to be shifting gears and going and staring at code somewhere else. The amount of work that went into making it so the IDEs can extract that documentation and provide it to you in localized, immediate access really, really helps. I mean, I did Perl coding for decades, and this is night and day over what I used to have to deal with in terms of figuring out how things work. So please use Dart doc. Please include at least class definitions, if not method definitions.
Well, Just remind me, Randall, what was it that you had to read like a file in Perl? You had to do like left pointy bracket, @ sign, exclamation mark, like the file name, didn't you? Or some weird, like, they had so many weird operators that you could, like, that would be like the default actions were like, what?
I am immune to any conversation about the syntax of Perl.
He's like,
I have such thick skin about that. It doesn't matter ever again.
I remember it fondly. Don't get me wrong, but it has a time and place. Put it that way.
Yes, I was actually coding in Perl just this morning in the Dart channel on the Flutter Discord. So I was showing something that Perl actually did really nicely in terms of iterating over a list of items. Generating them as needed, so that was kind of fun. Anyway, you have the gist up yet?
I was just bringing that up.
Okay.
Let's.
By the way, just so everybody knows, I did drop a link in the YouTube chat at least for the effective Dart documentation page, where it tries to teach that, because really is. It is so counterintuitive. You know, if you haven't done it before, when you start writing good Dart doc, you find, more importantly, you start reviewing someone else's Dart doc with this in mind. You see they're saying things that are like not what they should be saying, and not.
Another one is, I really hate it when people use AI to generate the docs, because it's like, generate docs in this function, and it just explains what the function does. It's like,
we know that already. Yes,
yeah.
It's exactly what we could derive in the first place. So yeah. Cool. All right. So you're showing this gist at this point, almost?
Yep. Going to bring it up. Right.
Already.
Where am I? Whoops.
Let me hide this then to get that out of the way.
Let's see if this.
I have to drop off camera for just a second. I'll be right back.
All right.
Let me zoom in.
Enhance.
So I'm going to not pronounce your name because I'm terrible with names. Shiva?
No.
Oh, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Thank you for your question. Anyway, for localization, developers usually have to manually enter translations in separate files for each language. Well, there's one way of doing it. It's not usually. Languages have to support. I want to create a package that automatically translates strings at compile time itself. Very nice. Trans Flutter, as it is here. Cool. It uses a CLI tool to generate translations, and create separate files in separate languages. Then the package reads those generate files and translate strings based on the current locale. However, whenever locale changes at runtime, the strings don't change according to the locale. Even if I do set state in the Material app, I have to change the key as well for change to appear. Okay, you're doing this wrong. Is there a way to not to change the key? You shouldn't have to rebuild anything. You don't have to do set state. You don't have to change the key. Done. So that's the first thing you're doing wrong. But still, the change of the current locale. Okay, so let's take a look at what's going on here. So, okay, so you initialize your thing. It does the loading, whatever it needs to do. Shares all this stuff. Translation builder. Nope, that's your first problem. That you can't do it that way. That's not the way to do it. So, yeah. So this is wrong. So what you're missing is the fact that Material app already does an asynchronous loading of locales and does the management of the current locale for you. Okay, you do not need to change anything or do any sort of building around this, right? So if you go to api.flutter.dev and then we go look up Material app. So the Material app will override. Where is it? Let's go to this constructor. So, oops, that's what I'm looking for. So, localization. So you got the current locale, right? If you want to override the default, then you've got these locale resolution callback, list resolution callback, and delegate. The delegate, you still need a delegate. You are not supplying a delegate, right? And then you have the supported locales, which you'd also generate, and then that's what can also be used. So you provide supported locales and delegate, at least the two that you need to supply. The resolution callbacks, or if you want to have some overriding behavior, like have one language resolve to another one instead, or stuff like that. But if you look at the localizations delegate, what it has is is supported loading that resource. So the idea here being that is an asynchronous operation. That is what you should be implementing, not your upfront load. So instead of doing your upfront load like this, you might want to do an initialization of your library, fine. But then when they choose that locale, that's when you then load that locale, right? That's when you can then go load the file, right? So this piece is the load functions where you're supposed to be doing that. And then, and then again, you've got a should reload just in case it's being rebuilt, right? So it's just these really that you need to support. Then when the user changes their locale on their device, what happens is there's a, widgets binding observer. The actual interface underneath this is pretty straightforward, but basically you get a did change locales here. And this gives you the preferred locales. So this is through, you can see here through platform dispatcher on locale changed. And what will happen is that's automatically monitored, and it will then load the new locale when the user chooses it, right? If you want to provide a behavior where you're overriding the chosen locale, then you can do that. And at that point, that's when you want to, you can choose a localization of, is it? I think it's localizations. I think it's localizations. Really? It's not going to load. There we go. Oh, look, there you go. Look, it even shows you an example of loading localization resources here. I'll pop that in the chat.
I noticed they didn't localize localizations for the UK. It's got a Z.
Oh, yeah.
It's not localized.
It's interesting because like sorry, go on.
I just said we're based out in California.
Yeah, really. Mountain View chose this pronunciation.
Yeah. Anyway, so at that point, if you want to like do your own custom locales, then yeah, you would want to rebuild the material app and override the locale, right? In which case, maybe you do want to have a builder around that. But yeah, it all depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, by looks of what you're doing here, you just want a delegate and the support locales list. But go have a look at material. You can go look at the source code of Material app, right? Go on, sorry, Daniel.
I just want to say one thing here. Looking at that, given, I mean, I know this is just a demo, so you may very well deal with this, whatever. But I don't know how long it's going to take on the await that you've got up there. And so one of the things that I've done based on a recommendation from Simon quite a few months ago is I actually go ahead and throw up a run app right at the beginning with something that lets them know we've loaded and we're doing, we're initializing. And that way you don't have, a white screen or whatever while you're waiting for that run app to run.
Refer to my talk from last year's FlutterCon.
I mentioned this year's, I mentioned my talk from this year's FlutterCon.
Oh yeah, cool. So yeah, the problem here is also if this crashes, right? Let's say it fails to load because the files are corrupt in some way. That's it. Like the user's not told, it just stops working. The app's frozen, right? So it's like not a great place to be, right? So this was the recommendation for some time at the very beginning to like await things because of the way the native splash screen loaded, and that's all got a bit updated now, and you can actually hold the native splash screen using there's like a delay. It's in my talk. It's in my look at my FlutterCon talk from 23, but there's a way of delaying the frame rendering. Anyway, yeah. So, but the rest of this is fine. Yeah. Does that hopefully that helps?
A nice use of a gist.
Yeah. Cool. So back to I guess back to questions.
Oh, okay. Here's a Windows question. Child process created with process start on Windows do not terminate even when the parent process is killed. SIGINT and SIGTERM listeners don't catch termination from task manager or other failures. That means it doesn't act like Unix. Oh, well.
Yep. Correct. There you go. I mean, what's the question? You're stating a fact.
Yes.
I don't know what the question is. Are you saying how do you terminate them?
Maybe.
I think there is a way of actually creating child processes, but it's not using the standard APIs. I feel like there is because they don't do forks, right? Like fork is not a thing.
Yeah.
Actually, does it? Do you know, I can't remember because the POSIX standard that Windows supports is like POSIX 1. I think not like it's like the very basic stuff to make it. Well, that's what made NT compatible with POSIX. So people can start porting
he has confirmed that's what he would like to know is how to terminate.
Oh, okay. Keep track of the PIDs and then terminate them.
Yeah. Okay.
You can register a quit. You can register a quit handler, right? So there's actually if you're doing this in Dart, there's a package called Shutdown, and the package on public local shutdown. You can register terminators, right? So you should be able to keep track of your child PIDs, and you have access to shut them down. You can then run terminate process if you want to tear them down, or you can signal them a terminate signal. They do. It does exist. It just doesn't automatically do it. It's a real pain.
Okay.
It's a real pain.
Enough of that. How can we increment the FCM notification count on our Flutter app's home screen throughout the entire app lifecycle, including background?
So this is inherently is just the way that the Firebase client libraries work. That has to come from the server. So if you want to do it for your app lifecycle, including your apps in the background, you tell your server side sends a new push message with the new count. Alternatively, you do not use the notification system built into FCM, and you just do your own local notifications. So you use the local notifications package, and you do background data push notification on FCM. And when you get it, you then display your own notification with your own count, and then you can keep the count to wherever you want and display it.
Well, I hate to say. Go ahead, sorry.
All I was going to briefly say was it's either like you do it their way, which is always pushed from the server because that's how push notifications work. There's the notifications with like title, content, and cam. Or you do it yourself locally. So you receive data push notifications, which are just fields, right? And then when you get that data push, your app opens up in the background, and then you update the local notification yourself. So you're taking control. There's one or the other. There's no magical way of doing it. Yeah.
So what I was about to say is a meta information, which is that we have 15 questions left in the queue. We only have an hour left of the show. So I'm going to cut questions off. I'm going to open it up for one more minute. So get your question in. But after that, it's hard cut off. Come back in 167 hours. Right. Next question here. When targeting web, how do you pick a file? Web has no access to path and store it in Firebase storage as a file, not bytes. Tried file package, didn't work. Yeah, the web is really limited to whatever the user lets you pick.
The file picker works.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So what it does, the way it works is it creates an file input field. Yeah. And presses the hidden button, which starts the prompt. And what happens now on web is when you pick that file, you have access to the data of that file, and then you read it back as an array of bytes. So it says here, targeting web, can you pick a file? Web has no access to path. Yeah, you don't get it as a path, you get it as bytes. That's why the concept of the file picker and image picker use X file as a class. X file can be bytes or a path, and you have to know which one and do the appropriate action. To be honest, you should not be using parse anyway, because when someone picks a file off their system, you don't actually have access to their file system, right? Normally, most apps now. The way it works is they send you a stream of data instead. And this way, it means that you're not restricted to like just picking, like if they pick let's say they pick a file, you can't just browse the directory of all the other files, right? You don't have access to them. And this is again about privacy and obviously, restrictions. It used to be that every application running on your machine used to have access of every byte on the hard drive and anything it wanted. That was just doomed to fail. So now there's lots of restrictions in place. So ideally you should always be using the bytes getter, and if you has a path, it will read the file in and do that for you. And storing Firebase storage, not bytes. Bytes are a file. So just store it. Yeah. Firebase storage has a write bytes function.
Cool.
Yeah, and at that point, there's no reason not to. I mean, I could get the fact that you got a large file and you'd like to have a handle of that file so that you don't have to, download all that data to try to do something. But that's not how it works. For just the reasons that Simon just explained. I mean, it's not safe to let you go pick something. I mean, so either you're letting him pick it again, or you're going to have to kind of keep your control of it once you've got the bytes.
It's called cloud storage, the package, isn't it? Yeah. It's been a while since it was that. Is it called cloud storage? No, what's it called? Oh, no. Come on, guys. Firebase storage? It's Firebase storage. Hang on. Let me bring this up.
Yeah,
just hide the question for a second. Yeah, so Firebase storage. If we go look at the API, just briefly, it's an API reference. You get a what's it called? A child reference, or whatever it's called. Reference. It's reference. Yeah, and then you have put data. There you go. Unit list, and then we've also got put blob here. Interesting. This is only supported on web platforms. That's even better. So I suspect so what you get back is called a blob on the web platforms. You put that in the first parameter here, and it will automatically read the file in and pipe it back out again. And it's done inside the browser. So it's an optimal path, basically. But if you read in the bytes...
Is the settable metadata where you tell it it's PDF?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the content type. Yeah. Yeah. So in here, you add your That's the other thing. Sorry, is it Nico? Yeah, Nico was the question author. Yeah, if you want to do it as PDF and that's not working, that's your problem. It's because you did not set the content type. So you need to specify the content type in your settable metadata as application/PDF. There is actually, go look it up. I think it's application/PDF. It's been a while. And then also you may want to set the content encoding or content language and things like that. But to be honest, that's the only one you really need to set, content type.
Yeah.
And that way, when you
the question.
Yeah, if someone gets the download link after that and they just open it up, the browser will then look at the download type and then know that's a PDF and open it as a PDF. Yeah. Without that, it just treats it as bytes and then you'll get download. And that's probably what your problem is.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, move on. Has anyone used Vania Dart for backend development, given its similarities to Laravel? Not me.
Having never used Laravel, I've heard about it, and I've not built a full project from scratch. No, I haven't. And I can see that how if people are coming from PHP Laravel, they can. It would be a good idea for them to try Vania Dart. But I've not had a need or a time to try it out. But it'd be good to experiment with all these back-end technologies for sure.
It would be nice if we had.
I'm going to take a look at it because I have used Laravel.
There's some links in the Slack people have been posting.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go check it out.
Cool. All right.
I'll report back.
What? Sorry.
I said I will report back.
Okay, report back. Yes. Any advice on keeping all the versions, Gradle, Android, third-party packages, and libraries used in a mature app having a heck of a time migrating to 3.19 and updating the Android build files? Yes, this is a constant pain in the side. This is what they pay us to do as engineers.
This is your job.
Yeah, this is your job.
So Michael, I know we're just saying that flippantly, but this is painful. But here's the thing: even if you weren't doing Flutter and you were just doing Android, you would still have this problem, right? The problem is being multi-platforms. Now we have this problem on Android, iOS, Windows, Linux, whatever your target platform you're supporting. You have to think about the dependence on all these platforms, right? And the problems you get with them, right? So this is why it's very critical to look at your dependencies, ensure you're not including too many dependencies, do dependency management, keep up to date, because if you keep up to date regularly, then there's little to no jump in functionality or so as long as you do those incremental updates and keep up to date, you'll find that you're always on top of it. If you leave it to go for a long time, you'll have a heck of a time trying to update, right? So just that tip. Now, when you talk about these versions, sadly, the Gradle version, Gradle Android plugin version, you've got the Android version, the target version, the minimum version, and you've got third parties. What am I forgetting? Oh, Kotlin version, So all of these have to be in this strange kind of alignment that makes the magic work. To be honest, Michael, the advice is just read lots of Stack Overflow, read lots of stuff, just do the research and practice. I will mention though that most people don't know about maven.google.com. Actually, I complained about them not having a website on this when it first came out, and I was speaking to some of the engineers, and they decided to prioritize and actually add the page. So if you go to maven.google.com, that's the official Maven repo for all the Google packages, and you can see all the versions, you can see all the metadata, and it really helps. You can download the POMs and the AARs and everything else, so it can really help in terms of trying to find the compatibility you're looking for. But to be honest, there's not really a magic bullet to this. I will say that you can. One of the things we do recommend doing is if you've got your project checked into Git, delete your Android folder, do Flutter create dot. You'll get the most recent templated, thing. And then what you can do is look at your Git tool, whatever it might be, your IDE, fork.dev, whatever it is. And you can see, I'm going to bring my icons back in because I don't want to replace those with the normal Flutter ones. And you can come back to an equilibrium and see what it changed in your build. But sadly, the kind of Gradle's dealing with Groovy DSL, Gradle using Kotlin now and in your Gradle scripts and all this other stuff. Yeah, it's just the way it is, and just be aware, just be thankful you do not have to deal with a meta build system on top of that.
No.
Okay, like Bazel or something more, because it just adds another layer of complexity on top. Tooling and building is just a big part of development.
Yeah. Also, be very aware of the packages you use and the tools you use, that they have change logs and breaking changes listings often.
Yep.
And be sure you're aware of that for the tools that you're using, and the stuff you're using in pub will typically list in the change log breaking change if something is actually moving on. Flutter, I know the core stuff for Flutter and Dart has breaking change listings that are really, really, really important to read, because they will tell you if how to get from 319 to 326, for example. You know, was it 26? What's the latest one? Something like that.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that, like, for example, the will pop scope to pop scope, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've been with this up on the stream before. We walked people through the changes that were coming up ahead of time.
Right.
And just be thankful, Michael, that we actually have breaking changes and all this information. Most repositories and most packages and frameworks just don't give the amount of detail that Flutter does. So be grateful that you actually have what we have.
Absolutely.
I hope we keep getting that level of detail.
Yeah, we should. We shouldn't be any problem with that. By the way,
I think the Flutter tool will actually show warning for Android now. So if your Gradle plugin is out of date, it will show warning, and in future, I think they want to just fail the build.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of things you can start
to Gradle, the right Gradle version and Gradle plugin for Android.
I mean, it's a nice idea, but it's never that simple.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Nobody said it is.
Go ahead.
Now you go, sir. Sorry.
All I was going to say is I will admit that when I was doing a little bit of Android development before Flutter, my secret was I would play around changing things until Gradle somehow magically worked, and then try to never update anything again, as far as that went. And when I had to, repeat the process.
Well, I got the perfect eye of Newton, tongue of frog, and that I'm not gonna change it. It's like that's it.
It's like,
right. I have the right size voodoo stick. I'm whacking it with the right size voodoo stick. That's the important thing. Yes. This is probably just going to be a really short question answer, because what's there to say? Is there some discussion going on of Angular versus Flutter? Yes, there's lots of discussion going on about Angular versus Flutter, but not here.
I mean, I don't know. Okay. So I'm assuming this person is, because Angular is a web-based framework first.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you mean using Angular on the web versus using Flutter, or using Angular Dart, which is a community package now, versus Flutter framework. There's lots of discussion around this, but to be honest, like, just use what you're comfortable with. Like, it really doesn't matter, right? Well, like, there's no competition here, right?
And I would point out, last year at FlutterCon in Berlin, Michael Thompson gave a talk, and he's obviously pro Angular, and he went to FlutterCon to give a talk, and what his talk was, it was Angular and Flutter. It was not versus, for sure. And I'm sure he would still feel the same way. And he, basically, because now that we can embed, into a normal web page, we can embed Flutter into it. We can take the best of both worlds if you want. And that's what his talk was last year about.
Cool. All right, let's move on. Interested in becoming a DevRel, please advise the way forward. Get smart, get friendly with people. That's the two biggest skills.
I wish I had the answer. I got close. I got close a couple years ago, and I didn't quite make it. Apparently passed the interview, but they went internal instead of me. So
this is also a place to bring in meta information, which is that we aren't Google. We do not work for Google. We are community members who are enthusiastic about Dart and Flutter and put our time in to share that. The only thing that is slightly closer to Google is that Rafael and I are both Google developer experts, which means we sit in a unique position where we have access to some internal information, and we also have the ear of Google a little bit more than the average person. Is that a fair way to sum that up, Rafael?
I'm not a Google developer expert.
Oh, you're not a GDE? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, then,
thank you.
Then it's just me.
Look at that backyard way Randall's got to say, hey, I'm a GDE.
Unless you have some inside information about my hidden application, then
the thing is, they give us inside information, but they also put us under an NDA, so it's almost useless. And it's usually only about 3 weeks before it actually gets announced, so it's not really all that useful for inside information.
It's along the lines of, here, will you try this out before we embarrass ourselves?
Yeah,
glue on toast.
It is nice though. It is nice though that as a GDE, I get early access to all the cool things like Gemini upgrades and IDX and a bunch of stuff before the public gets to see it. So it's kind of fun.
The other thing I would point out is the fact that there are more and more places now that have DevRel jobs.
Yes.
So like Stream has DevRel people, Flutterflow has DevRel people. I mean, I know quite a few people that have gotten into DevRel that are not like Flutter DevRel. Yeah. And so yeah, it's I would say probably the best way to get into it is to kind of start doing it. Start creating content, start educating people, and what's the worst that happens? Maybe you become a GDE.
Yeah, that's horrible. Yeah,
what you want to do. You want that.
It's funny. People ask, how do you become a GDE? How do you apply? What do you have to do to learn first? And the real question is, a GDE is merely a recognition of things you were doing anyway. Yeah. So I would naturally, even without the GDE title, spend time answering questions on Slack and Stack Overflow and Discord, and give presentations when people give me the opportunity, and publish things on YouTube and stuff. I was naturally doing that anyway. And so the GDE title is just simply something that says, hey, I'm one of the 10 people in the United States that has reached a certain level of understanding about Dart and Flutter that can be sort of special noted out to be able to do that. So that's all.
Well, hopefully soon to be 11.
Hopefully soon to be 11. Yes, there we go. You get your application in and make it work. Hey, well, you could do some live coding with this next question. When do we use a queue instead of a list in Dart or Flutter?
I mean, it's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, if I remember rightly, doesn't list and queue have like an overlap on its interface now? Like it has like an add last, get first, and all that.
There's a list queue. Yeah. It's this thing that the two combine.
It's a list.
Yeah.
List queue or queue list. I forget it's one of the two noun stacking. I forget which way the nouns are stacked.
Yeah, I mean the list class is easy enough that you could do a queue pretty naturally without needing to use a special queue thing. It's not quite as bad as back when I was in college, and we were using arrays that were kind of weird, But
the thing about a queue is that you can add or subtract elements at the ends, either end, with minimal syntax. Where a list, you kind of have to say, I want to move everything over one, and so
I don't know if it actually has that problem anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you had the original arrays, you would have that problem. I don't think it has that problem. Hang on, let me just bring it up. Why not?
Yeah. Let's look at docs. The docs can tell us.
Yeah. I remember queues and decks and
all these things that people now call DSA. They didn't call it DSA when I was a kid. They just called it programming. Now it's a specialized DSA.
Yeah.
Data structures and
algorithms. So subclasses can remember different lists, different kind. Almost comfort lists are fixed or growable. Sure.
Yep.
And you want growable, yeah.
Obviously, if you want growable, then you still actually have like was it like lots of like I think there's look, last and first.
Yes.
But here's the thing, like you can do insert 0 with an element and it pushes it into the beginning, but it's not as clear. It's not as clear as saying, okay, add first, right?
Yeah. Right.
How
do you delete the first element in a
remove
list?
First, right there. Oh, delete the first element in
the list. On a list. I mean, you can just remove that 0.
Remove
right?
0. Yeah.
I think that there's
remove that. Oh, remove that. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can treat them both the same. I think this is what the question is trying to get to, right? And there's even a list queue. It's a list based on a queue.
The best of both worlds, or maybe the worst of both worlds.
Yeah. Oh, this is interesting. Keeps a cyclic buffer of elements. It grows no larger than the larger buffer when it fills up.
Constant time, peak, and remove.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That might be helpful.
Ooh. Amortized constant time.
Yeah.
Efficient queue for any queue or stack usage. So this is the thing. This is like an implementation, right? Like, so it's a bit like when people talk about like I've got to find it now. When people talk about list itself was it hashed linked list or something it's called? Hashed lists. I can't remember what it's called now. Damn it.
Probably hashes one of the children.
Look, linked hash map, linked list, all this kind of stuff. Like the default map is this, right? Like, so you actually have the implementation. If you look at the source code, you'll see that the constructors for like list and map are actually factory constructors that reference the actual implementation. But yeah, I mean, like there's various ways that you may want to make your code more or less efficient. And it does depend on choosing the right one for the right job. And that's what we mentioned earlier about those efficient lists. There's reasons that you may want to use particular, like, again, it's all about memory allocation. If you need to reallocate your entire list to generate a new list, that's going to be very inefficient, right? You have to copy references of all this data back and forth. It's very inefficient. That's why things like linked list, are around, where basically you have list items that refer to each other. Right. So the idea is that if you want to remove something out, you can actually do that as an atomic operation and be fine to actually modify the list as you're traversing the list. Where a lot of things like modifying a list and like removing an element from a list whilst you're actually traversing the list with an iterator normally you get a concurrent modification exception in a lot of languages. I think Dart gives you that as well.
I think so too.
Because the problem here is that it was expecting to iterate so many times, like with a snapshot, and now you've like changed that, right? So, and one of the things that people do to solve that problem is they actually just wrap list.of with the original set, whenever they get the original data. Then it makes a brand new list, and they can iterate that brand new list, so they know that if the underlying list is modified, it doesn't affect your iteration. However, there's a cost attached to that. Now, with young space scavenging, like remember the elements are not copied; it's just references to the same objects. So with young space scavenging and other things, maybe this is more or less effective if it's something you're doing on every frame. You can reuse the same object, but every little helps. So yeah, choosing the right one can help.
I was also going to suggest that for something like list queue, I was going, I could use that everywhere, but you need to make sure that it implements lists because there are things you're going to want to pass it to that expect a list.
That's the other problem.
Yeah, you have to make sure what does it implement so that what interfaces is it compatible.
It really does bug me when you get lots of libraries and frameworks that use list instead of iterable.
Yep.
Yeah.
What they should really be doing is taking iterable because they care for a list of items that they can iterate over. They don't care for the overall length. The only thing that list gives you over an iterable is a length, like the known length of it, right?
Right.
Anyway.
Right. Cool.
And
anyway, that was a good question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I like the question too. And I would say if you understand the difference between a queue and a more generic list, if what you need is a queue, definitely use the queue. I mean, it's it'll be better. It'll be more understandable what's going on. But like we said, you can do everything in a list.
Yep. And I presume that a queue is more efficient for inserting and deleting at the beginning and end than a list is. A list probably has to move all the elements over in memories if it's
I would
delete.
assume so too.
Yeah.
It's
So
got hashes.
there's that kind of thing too. All right. Next one. Let's do it. How to store keys like Facebook keys, Google keys in a secret manager in a cloud that we are mentioning. This is an old security problem that we seem to get every third show or so.
Okay.
How do you manage that?
Okay, so first of all, the keys are supposed to be in your like manifest files and things like that. That's just how it works, because keys are not inherently private, right? Like they are identifiers that are shipped inside your app for your app to use on a publicly facing API. They're not inherently secret in that way, right? They're not like private keys, right? They sit somewhere in the middle between like a private and public kind of thing. They're tokens. So what I mentioned about this is you probably want to, it's all about how you build your app. So you have your own secret storage, and when you build your app, you retrieve them from that secret storage, and then you dump them into the build process, and they can be used during the build. So they're not checked into your repo. That's one way, right? Another way to also manage your keys are to rotate them regularly, right? So issue new ones with each release potentially, right? So each build gets new keys. This ensures that, you know, if they're leaked or if they're being misused, you can then deprecate the old ones and remove them after a while, after you've maybe force migrate people. However, if your keys are being used at runtime and they're not part of the build process, there's certain keys that you need during the build process. So things like, is it FCM and Firebase, they're going to need at least one key to do some of their googly stuff, right? However, if you need to access APIs at runtime, then you can go download those keys from an API. And in that situation, you would have a cloud function that returns a JSON object with those keys in, right? And then you can just rotate those keys as often as you want in the back end without having to redeploy the app, and then they get downloaded when the app starts up. There are ways to override these keys, like Firebase now allows you to override at runtime. As long as you initialize Firebase at a Firebase app instance before you access any Firebase APIs, then you won't get any problems. So you can actually download those keys at runtime and use that. You don't have to specify Google Service JSON file anymore. You don't need the Play Services plugin anymore. You can do it without. You can actually do it in dark code, which is quite nice. So that also means that you can put your keys within your project. But things like Google Maps will always require you to put a key in the manifest because that's how their library works. So yeah, sorry, that was a long answer to a very short answer, which is do your best.
Right.
At my company, I don't think I don't really have to worry about that. That's a back end problem to make that happen. But we use, I mean, our stuff is done in such a way that it can be Dart defined in to get it in there, and we're using GitHub secrets to store, you know, things like API keys that once again are. It's probably better if they're private. It's not, you know, it's probably better if they are.
Just to explain what Daniel was saying, that GitHub Secrets is a way of storing secret information in environment stuff against your GitHub project. And then when GitHub Actions run, they can actually access those as part of the build process. And again, that's about, now you're doing DevOps, now you have to set up your build pipeline. This is all great. However, if you're using something like CodeMagic, then it's all kind of handled for you. Like you fill out the stuff on the system and then it can just all work, and you can put your injector variables in with scripts and various other things. But yeah, it's not easy. Again, a whole portion of development, which is not building the app itself, it's actually maintaining the product and making the product build and function.
Yeah.
Which
I highly recommend getting a back-end team. They're great.
Yep, definitely. All right, let's move on. Inside a scrollable page, I have a scrollable table. Oh, once the table reaches the top of the screen, I want the table to be sticky and start scrolling instead of the page. How do you do that? You watch a previous show where we did that.
Should I find it?
Yeah, this is going to be one of your most frequently referred gists at this point.
Let me see if I can locate the. Carry on with the next question.
Okay. All right. The next question is a 3-parter, though. So if you probably want to focus. But I don't know if you want to.
Do you remember what we called this bloody example?
Oh God, no.
No, it was like
scroll, sticky scroll, scrolly sticky.
I need a date. And actually, Joe, let's go to the gist. Let's go to the gist. There's got to be. It was relatively recent, right?
Yeah. You edited
box overlays, drag scroll behavior. Wasn't that? Was it?
Maybe.
No. Custom alt-child layouts. No.
No, because it was drag scroll because you were like dragging
scroll. Scroll parent on overflow. That's the one.
There we go.
Right. The gist for the code is in the chat, and I shall find said code and run it so that people can see. Cool. Carry on, and then
okay. So this is a 3-parter that you got to pay attention. So there's stuff going on here.
Sorry.
Okay. So I'm using in-app purchases in my Flutter app after the purchase is successful, and when I want to hit my backend to activate the paid feature, how do I handle the case when this API call fails, but the money is now deducted?
With great difficulty.
Suppose there's a network error. I've already implemented request retries and caching, but there's still a possibility that the user clears the data for the app.
So you've normally had to confirm delivery, right? First of all, there's actually a confirm. So in-app payments, you get a pending come through on the stream, and you have to say it's successful. Otherwise, the money is not deducted. So that's how you handle that, first of all. However, the better answer is you can actually integrate your backend API directly with Apple and Google's pay systems. So you receive the notification that someone made a purchase directly from them. So in the app, they press buy. It's not the app that communicates with your server. It buys with Google, and Google's in-app purchase system calls your server. This makes it way more secure and less problematic. So if you just literally had an API that said, yep, the guy made a payment, it's like that's open to abuse, right? You can receive the token, and then you take that token and confirm it with the IAP service. That's how you're meant to do it. And even if you do that, yes, your system may fail at some point. But that's one of the reasons why it's better to get the notification direct from IAP and then apply it to the user's account, and then you tell the user's device it was successful, or the device just keeps long polling, or basically polling that keeps querying it maybe once a few seconds to see has the transaction gone through yet, is it successful, right? So it's not on the onus of the device that's a mobile device that can have a bad signal to complete the request. It's on the server to complete the request.
Right.
Makes sense?
Yep. Makes sense to me. Hopefully it makes sense to the OP.
Was that the multiple part, or was this just...
That's the multiple part one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
sorry.
There have been issues since we've had, like, dealing with locks and stuff like that. There are issues of how do you know that something's really done? And I mean, it's pretty well, you've got to, you need to build that redundancy in. And he actually added toward the end that they've decided that they would just let the user raise an error case, and they would mainly do it. And that's a bad experience. So I would definitely try to engineer a way that would minimize that.
There should be no reason that there should be no reason for you to. So again, it's about how you handle it, right? As soon as they make a start, here's the key. This is again, it's about how you build these things. As soon as a person starts to make a payment, you haven't even called out to IAP. You should be creating a record of their request to make a payment, and that is recorded. And then you're updating that request with its status, so that if it doesn't complete within a period of time, you can refund it. You can do all that stuff. That's just how you build it, right? The point here is you then also know that a person attempted to make a payment and failed to complete the payment process. This is all very vital information when it comes to understanding what's happening with your users. If all your users are trying to pay with this payment supplier and it's constantly failing, well, you're like, well, maybe I should change my payment supplier, or maybe I should talk to them about what's going wrong with our payment infrastructure, right?
You definitely want to make sure. You definitely want to make sure that the user is linked to that payment. So what So I mean, back end stored somewhere in your Firebase record, whatever, you need to make sure that payment is linked. And that gives you the ability that if they do raise a ticket, you can go look and you can see where things are with that. And and like Simon said, if you've been tracking it, you can see, okay, yeah, it looks like maybe something did happen at this point. But you at least have an idea, and it's not just because otherwise I might call you up and say, hey, I made a payment. Where's my premium features? They sound cool.
So on this part, I just like to bring this up. This is the in-app purchase plugin documentation, right? And as you see here, making a purchase, completing a purchase. You get a purchase stream to buying it, and then failure to complete purchase and get sex response 3 days will result in a refund.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yep.
So you call this once you know it's successfully working and the API didn't fail. Otherwise, it gets refunded. There you go.
Yep.
And you can put in your screen and other in like terms, it will be refunded in 3 days if it did not get processed. There you go. There is actually also to be it's another thing that people forget. Like push notifications, the in-app purchase system has no notion that a user's logged into your app, because you may not require, like you could have anonymous payments, like they don't have to have an account with you, right? So when you actually make a purchase, I think it's buy consumable or something. Where is it? In-app purchase, buy consumable, purchase param. See this application username? This is what you need to fill out. It doesn't have to be a username. It can be user ID or any other unique identifier. But this allows to attach this to an ID. That way, when the app launches back up again, when the user logs out, you set the user ID back to. It actually has a. I think it's set ID in here or something like that. I forget. Maybe the one time I actually want it, and I can't remember where it is. The career product details. I forget. Anyway, the point here is you can go read up about this, but generally the idea here is that you need to tell it that your ID, and then when you get the notification from their server to your server, it'll tell you it'll give the information as an extra parameter, so you'll know which user made that purchase, right? That's how you associate the things up. And then that user ID, we say application username here, could be the ID : transaction ID. Like you can actually join these things together, but this is basically your token to understanding which user made this purchase, right? It's quite important. Sorry. Yeah, I'll shut up now.
Done with that? Are you going to demonstrate the scroll thing?
Well, I was. That was it. This was the function I was looking for. Restore purchases. There you go. Okay. So when you restore it, you specify the user that's currently logged in, and then the app will receive the purchase information about what purchase the user's made, so that you can like tweak the settings, basically. Right. Carry on for now. I'm gonna see if I can run this.
Okay. All right. So you still haven't got that set up yet.
I would love to make the whole hour and a half, but I actually have a meeting coming up in just a couple minutes, so.
See you, Danielle.
No worries.
Thank you all. I will see you next week.
Yep.
See you then.
Cool.
And I will not hit the big red end stream button.
We're down to our last 5 questions anyway for the last 10 minutes, which we'll never get through entirely, probably. Should I ask the next question while you're still setting up there, Simon?
Go.
Let's do that. Yeah. Assuming I request permission, read and write to a specific path, do Android, OS, and iOS have guards preventing me from writing null to that entire block of memory? Aim to understand the limit of C and FFI.
Assuming I request read write to a specific path.
Yeah.
Does Android OS or iOS have guards preventing me from writing null to the entire block of memory? I'm not sure what you mean by path. So you mean like a string? I mean, honestly, if you're doing C and FFI, you're the same thing. The game is open. You just write wherever the hell you want.
Yeah, but you're writing it, and you're writing into files, though, right? If you're doing, you could write into your own memory and blow things up.
Well, it's memory here, so that's what I'm trying to understand. Does he mean files?
I think he means memory in the file system, but that would mean basically creating empty files and then deleting them. but that's not going to guarantee you any
maybe you
kind of
can
security.
clarify
Really.
your position on this.
Yes. Feel free
And then
to ask.
Because I mean, like we were talking about this, but maybe this is related to what we said about before about permissions and the faster we get stream of data.
Right.
It's when you write a file, you're actually writing buffers of data. Like there's no access to memory, right? You're handing over here's the data that I want you to write, and then it will write it. So this is FFI though. I don't know. Yeah, let's carry on.
Here's the follow-up here.
I got it working.
Follow-up.
Pointed to a block of memory. Again, I still don't understand the context, so maybe you can clarify what you meant by path. I mean, if you're getting okay, so let's say FFI. Let me be clear. If you've got FFI, you've got a pointer in FFI. It's just the address of memory somewhere, just the way it would be in C. And if you go right to that, and it produces a segfault because it's not, that address is not valid memory, or it's being used by something else, it crashes the system. That's what will happen. It treats it exactly the same as it does in C. It's up to you to protect, write your FFI code protectively, right? So you need to be making sure you're not buffer overrunning and everything else that goes along with that.
Yep. All right, that's done. Are you ready yet with the demo?
Yes.
Okay, demo time. And this is for the question. Here's the question that was originally there. I have a scrollable page inside a scrollable table. I want to reach the top. I want the table to be sticky and start scrolling instead of the page. And you are now about to show code that actually does that.
Yeah. So let's see if we can get this. There we go. So we did this before. I put the gist in the link, but here is an example of this is a I hope you can see a little circle on there. That's my thumb, right? So this is scrolling up and down on a real device. And then these are lists that have more items. And as I scroll these items, when it gets to the bottom, the list starts scrolling. And if I scroll in the opposite direction and we get to the top, this scrolls to the top. This is the behavior that I think you're looking for, where if you've got a table, and they start scrolling, once the table gets to the bottom, it stops scrolling. When you get to the top, it starts scrolling. So this is the kind of behavior I think you're looking for. And the way we do this
is
magic. With this scroll parent on overflow, right? So it's that simple. You just wrap it in this widget and it just magically happens, right? So you've got you put this, you can see here, here's your list view. Each item gets this, and each item inside that has your scrolling content. And what this is doing is, this is the entire widget here. It's just a widget. There's nothing magical about it. And this is the overall logic. So basically, it puts in a notification listener and a scroll configuration to choose if we want to have overscroll or not. And then when we get the overscroll events, right, we capture the delta information about what position they scrolled to, and then if we can't drag on the inside, it folds it up on the outside basically. So where is it? Yeah, on overscroll. So when we reach the limits of what's inside, then we tell it to action a drag or an update on the outside, and then we end the drag when the scrolling ends. It's that simple. That's the entire code for it. So scroll parent on overflow. That it's licensed under MIT, so go grab it. It's on my gists, and again, I'll put the gist link in the chat. But it works really well.
Cool. All right, getting close to the end here. Hopefully, let me get the next one. Oh, here we go. What's the difference between Flutter Pi, embedded Flutter, and the official Flutter? I'd like to develop an app for an ARM64.
So, okay, you need to clarify.
Answer this if you want.
Okay, go for it. Go, please.
Yeah.
Do.
Okay. So Flutter Pi is specifically for Pi devices, and it uses Raspberry Pi drivers, and it doesn't use Wayland or X11. You need still Linux though. It's probably the lowest level of those three. Correct me if I'm wrong, but probably. Embedded Flutter or eFlutter is done by Sony, and it supports both X11 and Wayland. And it probably renders with OpenGL or Vulkan. I haven't checked. And it also can use drivers directly from Linux kernel. And official Flutter embedder uses JTK, so you need a dependency. And if you would like to develop an app for ARM64, it depends on your device and use case basically.
The problem here is, Charles, you've told us the architecture, but the architecture and the embedded world is not enough, right? You need to know the platform that you're working on, right? So, for example, I'll give you an example. We'll give you this example, right? So you've got you're compiling Flutter, and it needs to know where to draw the pixels, right? It doesn't matter that it's ARM64, ARM32, or any type of processor, right? That's how the code is, what language the composers, what machine code the language is compiled to. But it still needs to know how to access the right hardware to do the right actions, right? And that's what comes from using the embedder API. So Flutter itself exposes an embedder API, and then you can build whatever project you want around that. So that's where FlutterPy comes in. So FlutterPy has used an embedder API to output on a Raspberry Pi. eFlutter, the embedded Flutter is probably, again, around using Flutter on Linux systems. I don't know what, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what systems that supports. I'm kind of curious now. I might look it up.
Linux, only Linux.
Yeah, but what flavors of SBCs does it support? I'm wondering. Right, I can't even find it.
Anything that runs.
Is this the one that's done by? Is eFlutter the one that's done by Sony?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's I'll bring this up on stream in a second. And then you've got Official Flutter. Official Flutter is what they support, right? Which is they actually support ARM64 Linux, right? So if you've got an embedded system that runs Linux, it doesn't necessarily have to be a Debian variant. You can put the Debian files in that it looks for, but yeah, you should be able to run Flutter on those. Again, it's all about how it's outputting the graphics, what support it does have for the driver system, and as we said, Wayland support, other sort of the glue that binds the graphics output of Flutter from the embedded API to the underlying system. So I said SBC or single board computer, but that's like the framework. So this is a Flutter embedded Linux, eLinux. Is this the one you were talking about? Not eFlutter?
That's the same thing.
Yeah. So it looks like they've actually supporting eLinux instead of Linux only. So this is support. Looks to me like this is the standard Flutter support, right? So you've got your apps, your Flutter API, service protocol rendering tech. This is all part of the Flutter engine, but the Flutter engine already supports these embedders, and this is adding eLinux. So this supports an event loop, Flutter engine management, platform channels, Surface, and this also supports these output streams. So Wayland, X11, GBH, and EGL stream, and requires UDEV, systemd, and libinput for input and device management. So they've kind of gone through the hard steps for you, right? But this is kind of cool, right? So this is a nice way. They are ARM64. So, there you go. Look on Discord Flutter's custom embedders. It's maybe we should be. Do you know what we should do? Maybe is anyone interested in we could put together a stream where we actually make our own custom embedder.
That would be
just
fun
for people that are interested in understanding a bit more about the API and how it all works. I was also going to mention this. This is a project that a lot of people don't. I think maybe Randall remembers Dartino. Maybe.
Yeah.
It was signed some time ago. This was like 8 years ago. It was before my time on Flutter and Dart. But this was the idea about running. So this is. I'll put a link to this in the chat. You can see here it's just called SDK, which is kind of it's one of the archive packages. But the idea around this, the website's no longer operational. But the idea about this was how do you run Dart on embedded? I mean, heavily embedded, like an STM32 with 64 kilobytes of RAM type embedded system, right? And they actually got it working. So they realized obviously it's things like Raspberry Pi 2, STM, and you would have this is the thing, you would have different platforms, right? So in this case, they're supplying like, here is the template, here is the device information about and what what CPU flags, how we compile things, how we do things, and the configuration as such for how you deploy and run Dartino in this case, or what the framework is and everything else. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty empty, that one. But yeah, the basis still remains that most projects that are at this level are going to require some definition of exactly what platform they run on. And you're going to have to possibly resolve that yourself, or customize it for your particular hardware. Yeah, good luck. It's good fun, though.
Cool. And just a comment about the scroll thing. Have you submitted that to the Flutter team yet?
No.
No? Okay. Yeah.
No, not yet. We should.
Because you have to write tests. You have to write documentation.
Yeah,
that just sucks, right? A couple more questions real quick.
An extra 6 hours.
Yeah, a couple more questions real quick. For a few clients might use only singletons to fetch data from an internet. They instantiated all their classes at once and call them everywhere they need it. Is this a bad approach?
So, singletons have been used in apps for as long as you could remember, right? Like so yeah. in essence, apps from the good old days were basically singletons. You'd have global variables everywhere. And the globals got a bad rep. And they got a bad rep because it's so easy just to overwrite them with new data, or to change your state unexpectedly, right? With zero state management, right? Now, this kind of comes to singletons as well, because singletons are this idea of essentially is the same as a global, so you can change it. Now you can make them final, you can do all this, but then that makes it even more difficult. So how do you tear down that singleton and reconstruct it if you need to, right? How do you clean up resources? How do you do all this other stuff? Another way around this is testability. How do you test your app if all you're going to do is singletons everywhere? You cannot have components that are easily testable with singletons. It just doesn't work, right? You need to use dependency injection. You need to have those dependencies injected into whatever your code is, so you can test that particular part of the code. So these are the reasons why most people don't use them anymore. Now, the approach of a singleton can still be made, right? That is, you have an object that has references to other objects, and you can pass that in to your class, right? You're using, there's a name to that pattern. I'd have to go look it up. But
service locator?
Oh, it's going to bug me now.
Okay.
Hang on. I got the book. Memento, was that one? Capture external objects internal states. The object can be restored later state. Oop, that's not the one. Oh, it's going to bug me.
And while you're doing that, I want to say that my approach to singleton.
Flyweight. Anyway, I think.
Oh, flyweight.
Anyway,
okay.
Doesn't matter.
My approach to singletons is basically just use a riverpod provider that all it does is lazily instantiates whatever its contents is. And the great thing about using a riverpod provider as a singleton is that it can be overridden in tests.
Yep.
So that way you can say, don't use this one, use my mock one instead. So much nicer than any classic singleton pattern. Just use riverpod and create a global provider that gives you essentially a lazily created unique instance of an object.
I mean, the same can be said, like again, like when you start your app up, you should have like spin up a future that does whatever it needs to load the state and manage the app. It creates an object. That object can then be provided down the tree, and that's it. In fact, I mean, I'm talking about this, but I was going to bring up the Wow Shopping app, which is something that we were building. But that's a great example of how you can do this kind of thing without singletons, right? So let me post a link to that in the chat. So this is we started this. It's been evolving, but it's an application that has a server. You need to run the server, update main.dev to your local IP address. So you can just run the app, and you've got like an e-commerce shopping app. We usually put pictures in there and update this, but it's really good. So I highly recommend you check out the source code. There's branches for Riverpod, Block, and a bunch of other stuff, old branches, which you can check out, so you can see how you do stuff in those different state management tools. Anyway.
Final question. Let's do it. And we can ship it. Opening a site using WebView Flutter, websites change the theme depending on the system's theme. How do I tell the websites to use a theme based on a local variable instead? Overwrite the systems.
Opening a site using WebView Flutter, websites change the theme depending on the system theme. Well, that's about the website. I mean, so the website probably uses a cookie. Yeah. So let's say I go to a website, let's say GitHub, right? And I say, I've got, well, maybe GitHub doesn't have this. You can change it in your profile, but let's say you select, like it has a button that selects light theme or dark theme on the website. Well, and then when you come back to the website, it's going to stay in that theme. That's because it got saved in either local storage or in a cookie. And WebView Flutter lets you get a cookie manager and inject cookies. So you can just go look at the cookies in your browser using the browser tools when you go to that website, and it'll tell you which cookie it is and what the value is. And then you just set that on before you enter your website on the WebView. That's step one.
Yep.
But again, it just depends on the website. Also, you can actually, if it's your website you're under control of, right? You say tell the websites. I don't know what you're dealing with. But if it's your website, then just make a JavaScript function, right? And then have that function called using JavaScript interface, which is a mechanism that WebView offers that you can then call functions in JavaScript from Dart and vice versa.
Yeah, that's, I think, what he wants to do. He wants to listen to local variable in Flutter. So have some kind of listener, and then just using the JavaScript channel, just invoke some JavaScript onto website that he changed the theme.
Is he chatting in the channel?
No, yeah. Anyway, that was the last question. So let's call it a day because you're out of here, right?
Yeah. I've got to make move. So we didn't get to set up all the coding stuff. I didn't actually get to do it.
Yeah, no coding at all.
I feel like we keep promising to do live coding. We're not doing it. So I do want to make a better effort at sorting it out. So I think, Randall, what time this week are you available?
Not the weekend, starting Friday, because my daughter and grandson are coming into town, so I'm going to be meeting with them. Awesome. So, yeah.
All right. Well, if not tomorrow, and probably it's either Friday evening. If it's not Friday evening for UK time, then it will be next week. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, by that time I'm already busy. So yeah, I'm busy starting about 2 p.m. on Friday. So
2 p.m. Friday. Then yeah, it won't happen. Probably won't happen this week unless
definitely
we can find someone else to join us. Right. Anyway. Right.
Okay.
Thank you for coming, everyone, and hopefully you got your questions answered. And come back next week if you didn't, and post your questions early.
166 hours. 166 hours. See you again.
All right. Bye for now. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Thanks.